doing today? What we're going to learn about is sealed boxes and ported boxes. Now, I was going to do this down at the store, but this topic is way too big, so I brought a couple boxes home, and I'm going to teach you real fast a lot of information about these two different enclosures, so you can better decide which one you want. After we're finished, if you're still confused, come on into the store and we can even talk about it more. But for right now, here we go. Well, as you can see, cats love speaker boxes. So, if you ever want to build a cat thing or, cat stand, cats absolutely go nuts over speaker box carpet. So if you ever leave a speaker box in your house and you have a cat, prepare for it to be all scratched up. Right, Frankie? Okay, free air. What a free air speaker box means there's no box. Back in the 80s and 90s, free air subwoofers used to be the thing. What would happen is you would take a subwoofer and you would cut it into the back deck, and the speaker would just use the trunk as the entire enclosure. Well, those days are gone. People still come in once in a while and say, oh, I want a free air, I want a free air. We don't do it anymore. Free air speakers are a thing of the past. Free air installations are a thing of the past, at least at our store. Maybe some other stores will do it, but we won't. It just ends up sounding like crap and you always blow the subs. So take free air out of the equation. Every single subwoofer has to have an enclosure, okay? Let's take a look at home enclosures, okay? What do they look like? Are they round? Are they anything weird? No, they're either a cube or a rectangle. That should give you a clue. You're talking JBL, PV, all your concert speakers, everything has a speaker enclosure. There's a reason for it too. Also, there's a certain depth, if you notice, on all home and professional speakers. Look at the depth of the box. There's a reason for that, okay? You have to have the correct airspace behind the subwoofer for it to operate at peak performance. As soon as you start cutting that speaker box down, like a truck enclosure, you lose half the bass. It's just a fact. There's no way around it. The best speaker boxes have the depth. Okay, now we're going to talk about speaker enclosures, the ones that you come into contact with the rest of your life. It's either sealed or ported or vented, either word. So the most common one that we use at Outrageous Audio is the sealed enclosure, okay? This one has no ports, no vents whatsoever. When you put the subwoofer into the box, you can push on the subwoofer, let it go, and it should come out slowly. Now that's a test that you can always do to see if your box is sealed correctly, okay? Anywhere out there, if you're building your own box, whatever. You push on the sub and then let it go, and the sub should come out slowly. If it comes out quickly, that means you have a leak in your box and you need to figure out where that leak is and get it sealed up. So when you push on the subs, let them go, they should come out slowly. So the advantages of a sealed box are that the cone is restricted from movement, which gives you all your power handling. So when you put a subwoofer into a sealed enclosure that has the proper depth, it's gonna sound awesome. And say your woofer is rated at 600 watts or 800 watts, in a sealed box, you get the full wattage. Now, before I go any further, I'm gonna have to teach you how sealed boxes sound as opposed to vented boxes. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna go into my office. I know this is gonna be a little long, but you need to learn what I'm about to show you. Okay, so I'm gonna teach you about frequencies, sealed boxes, and ported boxes. Now what I'm gonna show you right here is not exact. There's going to be those people out there that are going to write, oh, you're not exactly right. This is just for learning purposes, and it's just going to come from the top of my head from 30 years of experience. And what I'm going to show you is how bass works with these different types of enclosures. Once you understand this, it'll give you a firm grip on what to do with your speaker boxes. So here we go. The first thing that I'm going to show you is I'm going to draw a line from 20 hertz, which is usually the lowest reference point for bass. There's no songs that ever play 20 hertz. Everybody will say, I shouldn't say everybody, so many people will come into our store and say, oh, my box and my sub goes down to 18 hertz. You can't even hear that, so it doesn't matter. So we're going to go from 20 hertz to 20,000 hertz. What this represents is how many times the speaker moves per second. So if the sub is moving 20 times per second, we're at the lowest bass spectrum. At 20,000 times per second, that's where you're in your highest tweeter. You know, the shrill, super high cymbals, the way, way super high notes are at 20,000. As soon as you get past 20,000, you don't hear it, okay? That gets into the dog whistle stuff and way up there. Now, some people argue, oh, 22,000, whatever. The range that we're going to deal with is 20 to 20,000. So, when we're dealing with bass subwoofers, we're going to go from about 20 hertz to right around 300. 20 hertz, your lowest bass note. 300, it starts creeping into mid-range, okay? So now when you're dealing with a sealed enclosure, your sealed enclosure will play like this. The sealed enclosure will play straight across, okay? When you're playing a low bass note, now let's get into the super low bass, is right around 45 hertz. Most rap songs are recorded, their bass notes are between 60 and 80 hertz. Right in there. And then when you get into the high mid bass, it gets into about 100. And then when you start creeping into mid range, it starts getting into 300 and on up. And then as soon as you get into the 3,000, just to show you, 3,000 and up, now we're into the tweeter stuff. So what we're dealing with right now is just your 20 to 300 range. Now when you put a sealed box in your car, say you're going to play Too Short or something super heavy bass, now that's going to put the emphasis right in here, right around 45 to 60 hertz. If you play Van Halen or some of that Godsmack, really heavy, tight bass, that's going to be up in the 80 to 100 area, and it needs a faster response. So with a sealed box, it plays it uniformly all the way across. Now, when it comes to a ported box, it changes the whole game, okay? So I'm going to write sealed box right there. Now we go to a ported box. Watch what this does. With a ported box, it's going to play some of the areas not so good as a sealed. But with that port, depending on its diameter and its length, certain songs will sound amazing. This right here, this spike, can be adjusted back and forth by tuning the box, by adjusting the port, either its diameter or its length. So you can move this up and down the scale depending on the person's listening preference. The problem is let's say we leave it right here, okay? So now we get into the rap songs. You know, all your rap songs, all that type of stuff right there, the way this box is tuned, are just going to sound amazing. It's going to tear your head off. But as soon as you start playing the other stuff, like say we're going to play Van Halen, those are going to be up here in this area. You're going to lose some bass. It's not going to sound as good as a sealed enclosure. So that's what happens in regards to what happens with the bass playing. Sealed, ported. A sealed box is going to be smooth all the way across. Everything from classical music, country, whatever you want to play, a sealed box is going to play it at optimum performance. When you get into a ported box, some music is going to just sound amazing, others not so much. So this is where you need to decide when it comes to a sealed or ported box. I hope this makes sense, because you can move this up and down. So if you listen to a big variation of music, everything from classical, country, techno, rap, rock, you definitely want a sealed box. If you're looking for something that's going to tear your head off only in certain songs, and you want that to hear a half a block, 2 blocks, then that's a ported box. So now that you understand the frequencies, let's jump back to the boxes. Now every subwoofer that you purchase is going to have a book in it that will tell you the optimum airspace, okay? For a 12-inch or 10-inch, it's always roughly 1.5 cubic foot behind the speaker box. That's why at Outrageous Audio, we don't do a lot of custom boxes. People will come in and say, oh, I want the custom box, on my wheel well over here. But we explain them the truth that as soon as we put a box in and it's this thin, you lose half your bass. So you're going to spend hundreds of dollars to make it look cool, but it's not going to sound right. And once we tell them that, they go, oh, well, really? I go, and we can just put a box in that, that we can disconnect very easily. Now, in some situations, a sealed enclosure that is, this deep is not going to work. And as soon as you start getting a smaller box, it's an exact ratio of how much bass, you're going to lose. Now, of course, there are thin subwoofers and all that type of stuff. They will work, but they do not work as good as the correct enclosure. For example, this is an enclosure that we sell quite a few of. It's a very small down-firing 10-inch. Now, you see how thin it is? It's only about 4 inches thick. Now, there's no way that this box can sound optimal or perfect. When you're dealing with restricted space in some cars, this is all you have, and that's okay. They will give you some bass, but they will not give you the bass that a full box has. Now, there's a way to cheat it a little bit, and that's called polyfill. And what we do is we take polyfill, which is a quilt stuffing. You take polyfill right here. It's a quilt liner, and what you do is you stuff the box. When you stuff the box with the quilt liner, it kind of fakes the sub out to thinking that the box is a little bit bigger. It will give you deeper bass in some situations. So we can use the polyfill. We can use small boxes. That will get you some bass, but the best bass is going to be a box that is like a cube, just like a home sub or a concert sub. If it's in the right box with the right amp, it's going to sound awesome. Before I move away from sealed enclosures, I just want to let you know that number one, a sealed enclosure is for high power handling. Number two, it has the best response. And number three, they're the easiest to build. The disadvantages are next to none. The only disadvantage would be if you build the box too big. You don't want to build the box too big because then it ends up too boomy and you lose the control of the subwoofer. So, that being said, time to move on to ported enclosures. Okay, so now let's talk about the vented box, okay? Vented or ported enclosure. Now, we have a lot of people that come in and they want the vented enclosure. Now, after what I showed you on the board, now you understand what the vent does. The vent gives you a certain spike at a certain frequency. So it's going to make some songs sound twice as good, and others, they're not going to sound that good. So depending on your listening habits, you better make the right choice when it comes to sealed or vented, because vented is only going to play awesome on a certain song or certain types of songs. Most vented boxes are designed for rap, okay? So the number one problem with a vented box that most people don't understand is that when you put a subwoofer in a vented box, you lose half your power handling. That is huge. The reason why is the sub is not in a sealed box, so the woofer is in there just flapping around and is only controlled by the vent. So you lose half your power handling no matter what. Now, another thing too is if you buy the incorrect sub, there are subs designed for ported enclosures, okay? Like the Kicker CVR, DC Audio. These are huge magnet subs that are made to handle, that flapping around in a ported box. And when they're in the right box, with the right amp, with the right song, it'll tear your head off. These are competition, type boxes, and that's what they're made for. They're made to shake the crap out of the trunk, okay? If that's what you want, then you go ported. I hope that helps you in regards to sealed and ported enclosures. I'm going to cover a few final things that are popping up into my head. I'm going to say always go with a sealed enclosure. The reason why is if you go with a sealed enclosure, it plays everything correctly, and then just go a bigger amplifier. So if you go a sealed enclosure with a bigger amp, you get the best of both worlds. You get something that'll tear your head off as well as sound smooth all the way across every song category. Why wouldn't you do that? Now, when it comes to the ported enclosures, the only time that I would recommend a ported enclosure is if you were going to really get serious about bass. You're going to come in and get the DC audio, you're going to get the Kicker Solo Barracks, something that's going to handle, the excursion. What excursion means is how much that cone moves. The Kicker Solo Barracks, as well as the DC audio, they're designed for that. They're designed to move like that with basically no box. You put those in a ported box with the right power and the right deck, wow. Anything other than that, you're playing a game, okay? You're playing a game of Russian roulette. Say you take an inexpensive sub, put it in a ported box, now you're running it at red line, it's gonna fail, and you're gonna have to buy it again.
Dance with me, move your body, your life.
Now that is a ton of information, I know. And if you want to get real specific, you can spend hours and hours, on Google about subwoofer enclosures. But I just wanted to cover the basics for you. That's when people come in and ask whether vented or sealed, that's exactly, what I teach them real fast. And I only have about 30 seconds, to teach people when you're in our store. So hopefully this clears it up so you know which box, whether you want ported or sealed. Again, if you have any questions or want to know more, just come on down to the store. We'll show you a bunch of different boxes and we can go even more in depth. Thanks for watching. See you at the store.